60% of your week, 3 days should be around project management, give or take. And the rest should be on visioning, 1 block, strategic planning, maybe 2 blocks, financial acumen, maybe 3 blocks, and then team development is another 5 blocks, and then that covers 2 days. The other 3 days are working on project management. That's where then you're saying, okay, what vision should I be doing for a future project, right? Instead of just only working on project management that week, we don't get a consistent cadence. Or conversely, only working on vision, right? So we need to have a balance of our weeks to work on a project. That is how you consistently make progress.
Welcome to ReedFlections, a podcast on life, leadership, and learning. I am Art Calderon. I'm here with Reed Nyffeler, a CEO of a growing global franchising security firm, a husband, a father, a published author, a seasoned podcaster, and we've been going through a lot on leadership, Reed, in these past several months. We started by why developing leaders, right? Why should a leader develop leaders? Then who should you develop? Take the time to figure out who that is. And now we're in the middle of what capacities do leaders need, right? What capacities? Now, episodes 10 through 14, visioning, strategic planning, financial acumen, team development, and finally, today, we're talking about project management in leadership. What makes project management key capacities for leaders?
Yeah, so first of all, I think if we are doing projects and I hear people that say, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, it's always on a project. And then you see people that have bigger projects that are not stressed and overwhelmed. And everyone, this is the most emotional of all of them, right? And it's the biggest indicator too. You are upset, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed on a project because you didn't follow the process. You didn't have a clear vision. You didn't develop a strategic plan. You didn't put a financial acumen, and you didn't have the right team. Then you work on the project. You worked it backwards. People are like, how can that be true? Go and audit your stress around a project. And I'll give an example. So let's say you have a team project and it's for school, right? Many of us have been there before, and we got this team's project on the school. And then it's due the night before, right? And you're the next day, I should say. It's the night before. And you're like, literally, let's recount those conversations. My team didn't do the right work, right? And they're terrible. This person's not smart, blah, blah, blah. Team selection, right? Then you say, oh, financial acumen. Oh, it's not worth me investing my time in this because we're just going to get a bad grade anyway, right? That's financial acumen. Then strategic plan. Well, I got assigned a project I'm not good at. Why are they making me color X, Y, and Z project and everything else? Well, that was strategic planning. And then saying, I hate this idea. We shouldn't have ever done a project on this. There's not enough research to find it. That was vision. So now let's reverse that and say the class that got an A said, hey, we really spent our time at the beginning and we clarified the vision of what I want to work on. And let's say before we select a team, I really love this particular subject or this topic or this area of interest. Then I'd say, if I were to do well on that, I want someone that's good at the art side of it, that can do a good job on the PowerPoint presentation, or someone that, really understands the subject matter, someone that's a good communicator that can present it, or whatever the case might be. Then say, okay, what is the best use of my time? What is the worth? How is it worth it? Financial acumen. Then say, who should I select in the class that fits these objectives? Right? Okay, this person, they do a great job on their PowerPoint. I really like it, so I want them on my team. And this person, they really understand the subject matter that we're studying, so I want them as the person that's there. This person is highly organized. This person's a good communicator. I want them on my team. Then we get to the project management, right? And we have 2 weeks on this project. Hey, you work on the presentation. You work on the content. You're going to be presenting it. And now, would we be as stressed the night before if that's how we executed that? Right? My answer is likely not.
Probably not. Yeah.
However, we live our lives and we always excuse the end result with stress. I'm stressed. I'm overworked. I'm overwhelmed. And I've gotten this project. I can't get it done. All these things haven't happened. That's because we didn't take the previous 4 steps. That happens all the time as a leader. When I see a leader that's stressed, I am not going to enable the behavior. I'm going to illuminate what led to the outcome. And now they may not like that, right? Saying, well, I just need to, bail out the boat right now. Please help me. And I'm saying, okay, you're always going to be bailing out the boat the entire rest of your life because you are not dealing with the other 4 things before that. And you are only going to inhibit your ability as an organization to grow. And so if you are a person that is a leader and you are stressed or overwhelmed, it is not because of the project. It is because of your leadership, and you're doing the project first, and it should be last. So you are first jumping into the project right in front of you, and it may not even be a project you should be working on. That is going to lead to your overwhelming stress. You've not done the other 4 steps. Go back and listen to the other 4 podcasts, then do the project. And that is the first indicator as a leader. If you're stressed or overwhelmed by any project, evaluate the vision, strategic plan, financial acumen, team development. Then say, where is this project falling into that? And is it something we should be working on?
So, as a leader, you're really not wrapped up all the time in projects, right? But you should have some project acumen, some skill, some project management knowledge. Talk about that difference between being someone who's wrapped up all the time in a project and being the leader of that.
So the next section of this is, where do we apply these skills? And so there's really 5 areas, and we'll get to this in the next section of the podcast here. But associate, manager, director, vice president, and then C-level. At the C-level, you're effectively the preeminent leader in the group. So if you're only really good at one, then that will be exposed at scale, right? I mean, so you need to be good at visioning, strategic planning, financial acumen, team development, and project management. That doesn't mean it's an equal application of time. That means an application of understanding.
Okay.
So there will be times where I need to manage the project, right? Because the impact it has on the organization. So if I'm not a good project manager, but the organization needs me to manage the project, then the organization will suffer. So I need to do 2 things. 1, be capable of all 5, largely leaning towards vision and strategic planning in a C-level, but be capable when the project leads to that outcome, right? And so, there's always natural disasters, right?
Sure.
The U.S. has a natural disaster. And so if we go back to the early 2000s and we saw Hurricane Katrina and the issues that happened in New Orleans, there were poor project management happening. We didn't know how to get resources to the locations. We didn't know how to handle all these other things. And so we recognized, wait a minute, there's emergency needs and lives are at stake. And so we realized, hey, we have a lot of strategic issues that were not addressed early. We didn't have a clear vision on how we're going to handle that. We didn't have a strategic plan. We didn't allocate resources, financial acumen. We didn't have even a team or organization or structure in place. And so the project was horrific. And so there was no collaboration or alignment. So we were bad at managing a project, even though we're a huge country, right? We need to figure out how to do that.
How do you ensure that your team move the organization forward? So they have a project. How do you make sure the project's not detracting or just being taken away from the main goal of the organization? How do you keep tabs on that?
And again, I'm going to go back to where we started. If I didn't have a vision or a strategic plan, then I have no idea whether it's there. And I was going to do that. If I didn't apply financial acumen, right, and if I didn't then have the right team on it, then I'm not going to see progress on the project. Then we're going to do that reversed. So because I've gone through those steps, I'm going to say, okay, there's a vision that we're working towards with a strategic plan. We have financial allocation to that project. We have a team assigned to that project. Now I need to monitor progress. So now I'm all the way down there. Here's your scope of work, your defined project, what the timelines and accountabilities are. Then I do check-ins. Okay, hey, and depending on the expediency of the project, right? So personally, I think many organizations either work in 6-week cadences. That's what they're, if you're a developer, you have 2-week sprints. That's a project, right? In technology. I think organization, a 6-week cycle seems to be about right. It's half of a quarter. And then there's a quarterly. So somewhere between 6, 8, and 12 weeks is an appropriate assigned project. If it's too long than that, people get bored or they lose sight of it all. If it's too short of that, they're not going to get their best work. So ultimately, you have an organizational cadence, which I think is somewhere between 6 and 12 weeks, and that's where your check-ins. So I'm working on a project presently now. We're switching out a software vendor, particularly for payroll. Every organization has payroll. And so about 4 weeks ago, I assembled a team. I had a vision of what we wanted our payroll, his strategic plan, how it's going to integrate with our technology, determine the timeline, financial acumen, allocated resources, brought in a team about 3 weeks ago to say, okay, you guys are a well-balanced team that can do this. Then as the leader, I clarified the goal and put all those pieces together. So as I'm managing a project, it's critical that when that team is assembled, the first step is clarifying the vision, strategic plan, financial acumen, and why they were selected as a team. Then I told them my involvement. I said, I am going to, one, communicate that. I want you to come back in a week with the ideas of where you need the particular software to have address services. And so here's the group in one in our franchisees, home office perspective, and then kind of administrative or technological perspective. Those are the kind of the three categories we needed. And so they came back with an assembled list. I reviewed all of those and put them together, crafted a presentation. So then just last week, in fact, I went and presented in front of a group of about 60 potential vendors and people in those organizations and said, here's what we're looking for. They loved it because it's like super clear. I laid out the timeline of when I'm going to make a decision and ultimately the process and steps necessary to make the decision. So now we're at the stages. I said, okay, team, I'm going to remove myself for a short period of time here where you guys are going to then evaluate against those criteria you highlighted to make sure you grade them on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the best in that particular category that you've identified you have a need, 1 being the lowest. Then that'll be an average grade against all the vendors that submitted based upon the technology demonstration they had. And then I want you to submit those to me. Then I said, my involvement will come at the end. I'm going to negotiate on behalf of the organization because it's a large project I need to lead at the end. And so I will take all your feedback, making sure every voice is heard, every constituent group is understood, and that every vendor is appropriately assigned and aligned. Then I will select in the end. And I'm going to leverage my intuition as a leader, but I need your preparation to be able to leverage your feedback. And so then I'll make the decision. Then it'll go back to you for implementation. So I'm communicating, here's the 6 to 12 weeks this process is going to be. Here's the role that I am playing. Here's what I'm asking you to do. Here's how I'm going to use the information you're assembling. And then here's when it's going to go back to you because you're going to live in that environment. I'm not going to process the payroll in any of those capacities. But if I step away and say, that's your problem, then I put myself in a position where I'll just blame them. Yeah, you made a bad choice. Or, hey, Reed is holding me accountable to something he was unaware of. But if I appropriately use that project and lay it out as I gave you an example there, I'm infusing myself where appropriate, but not directing the decision. I am then, in the time of a critical decision, committing on behalf of the organization, the actual signature, and then handing back to the team to execute on that. I think it's a balance of a project. Now, how did I get there? Because I applied the vision. I applied a strategic plan. I looked at financial acumen with the appropriate team. I assembled a team that could execute on it, right, with the appropriate experiences. And then I subdivided their responsibility within the project. And then I worked that back. Okay, once your project is done, the team will come together. And then I'll look at the financial acumen. I'll get involved in that, make sure it's aligned with the strategic plan and aligned with the vision. Then I'll hand it back to you. Go execute. So that is how we stay on track, is we have milestones and clarity of communication. That's generally every project needs to have objectives and accountabilities and communication. And so in summary, those are the two things I'm applying. And I gave you a structure with how I'm doing that on a recent project I'm working on.
All right, so the best laid plans, right? You have a timeline. You got the team assembled. You make sure everybody's on board. But things don't always go the way the way you want, right? Sometimes there's things out of your control. You talked in another podcast about people and how having those people in there always bring some unknowns. So, what are some earmarks of a well-managed project in spite of those things happening? Something goes off the rails, someone doesn't show up, someone doesn't do the part, whatever the problem is. How do you know it's still well-managed, and what do you do?
So in season 1, we talked about kind of personal habits around that. And so I have daily check-ins, right? I call it morning, noon, and night. And so I know the 3-5 projects, typically for me, no more than 7 projects are ongoing, usually about 3 to 5. And so then I'll check in with the particular person morning, noon, and night. And that gives me intuition saying, is this ahead of schedule or behind schedule? Before I have my scheduled check-in, which is 2 months or 2 weeks or a day down the path, I'm getting a little bit of intuition to say, I'm not going to get good homework here.
By the feedback you're getting
Correct.
from them.
So again, if you go back to the first season, what is my daily activities? I'm checking in with the people that are leading projects. And largely they're assigned to my direct reports, in my case, 7 direct reports. And I'm checking with them morning, noon, and night. That's just general habits. And around those, I can get a sense as to where those projects are going, just based on, hey, wait a minute, I haven't heard anything about this project for a couple of days, and they have to have something tomorrow, right? Or, I've heard a lot about this, and they're only talking about problems. They're not talking about progress. So I'm generally checking in on that morning, noon, and night, and it drops in my schedule. So then I'm saying, okay, 1, do I let them struggle and figure it out themselves? And that's a part of their growth and development, team development. Or 2, do I have to intervene? And then I'll say to myself, okay, I'll let them struggle for another day, so they really see that I'm not enabling them or taking the project from them and doing it for them, right? They've got to learn how to do that, right? We can easily step in as a leader, right? And so think of it like, I remember early on my neighbor and my other house, he had a meticulously mowed lawn. And I remember one day he was out there with his son, and his son did about two, head back and forth. He said, "Get off the mower. It was a riding mower." He got back on. I'm like, the kid's not going to learn. And, never again did I see that son ever get back on the mower.
Oh, wow.
Well, and I think it's like, well, obviously this guy had too high of a standard. This kid was first time ever mowing. He's not going to do it perfectly, right? And quite frankly, you're going to have to mow next week no matter how good you do it. And so I think the problem was he overstepped, right, too quickly. And sometimes we need to let them struggle if the lawn's just going to grow again, and we can't jump right in on those examples. However, at times we need to intervene because the project, it's too critical. And so we got to kind of use our intuition as leaders in that case. And so we really have to manage the project. But a well-managed project would be one that ultimately we anticipate what those problems are and have a contingency plan, because invariably someone's going to get sick, someone's not going to show up, or something's going to happen, and we're just making those adjustments with contingency plans. I always say that the risk you're really assessing is the difference between plan A and plan B. The best laid plans, as you said, is plan A. It's always plan A. We're not going to take, this is our worst plan. We'll start with that one. If that worst plan doesn't work, let's go to the second worst plan. No, we're going to start with the best plan. And however, it's the best plan on paper. And sometimes when you go live, it doesn't necessarily, materialize the way we want it to. And so that's where, what is plan B? If I have a person and this is my plan for A, they're not available, they get sick, they're whatever the case, the show must go on. Who's my, understudy? And I ultimately put them into play, and then I continue the project and I intervene to a greater degree based upon that filling of the gap. And as the leader, we have to look at ourselves not as the person that should be doing the project, but as the person that's leading the project. What does that mean? We step in where it's not making progress. The challenge is we don't step in where we enjoy stepping in, right? I really like doing this part, right? Nope, it's not making progress here. I need to step in there,
right? Because
ultimately I am the jack of all trades, and I'm looking for the ace, and hopefully I've hired and brought in the ace. But ultimately, if a 5 or a 7 is out there on the board, I got to put the jack in there occasionally, right? Got to make sure progress happens.
That's right.
So that's what I think a well-marked project is saying. I've got backup plans. I'm employing those when appropriate, and I'm stepping in where the gaps are too great that can't be overcome by an employee.
Okay, so there's plenty of leaders out there who realize, I've been doing that. I want to be a better leader. I want to be a better project manager as a leader. What are some tools or some steps, some ideas you have if someone wants to improve as a leader in that sphere of project management?
Yeah, one of the analogies I use, I have this training that I've done before, and it's around Lego. And let's kind of walk this through each of the steps.
The
Lego toys.
Okay.
Yeah. There's any other Lego? I don't know, Art. Maybe you know another Lego than me, but that's the only one I know.
Hey, Lego.
Okay, well, all right, fair enough, maybe. But ultimately, I think sometimes we have a vision. I would like to build a car, right? Let's say we have this vision. And then we go just trying to communicate that and give the whole team a whole bunch of Lego pieces and say, build a car. And you may have in your mind what that car would look like, and they have in their mind what that car looks like. And then you're like, it wasn't a car I was thinking of, right? Oh, you built a pickup truck, or, oh, your car was blue. I would have picked red, right? Then the second is strategic plan. Hey, here are all the pieces that would build a car, right? So build that car. Right. And we may not have the appropriate count of those pieces, but we give them all the pieces. And maybe they're all red pieces, so they at least know the car is red, but they can still be able to pick up, they can build a car. Then financial acumen, we give them the pieces with the exact number it would take to build the car we're visualizing. Right?
Without any extra pieces.
So at least now financial acumen, we've given the pieces of the puzzle that's there. The fourth step is we say, okay, here's the team that's going to help you do that. That person builds the chassis of the car. This one may build the engine of the car. This one may build the road of the car, whatever the case might be. That's your team. So now you've got a handful of people that can help you and collaborate on that. But what does Lego do? I've never seen an organization with toys that have more project management ability than you literally go get your box. It shows the picture vision. It has the appropriately accounted or colors that you need, has the appropriate piece count in that package, the plastic, the exact number of piece count, no extras. And then the team is 2 to 3. You go get mom or dad. If it's a bigger piece, they can't put the weight to push on there. It's saying family can do this, family present. Even tells you the age of the person on the side, right? That's there. So they've really defined what the size and scope of team are.
It's got the instructions in there.
It's got then that's really the project management in the instructions. Do it in this order. Right? Do it in this order. In fact, if you even look at the box, they'll tell you how long it takes to do it. Right? Wow. If you do it, how long it takes you to assemble that. That is exactly, and then what happens at the end? Gratification of completing that project in time and its expectations. What do? They walk through those 5 phases. This is a child's toy that everyone's familiar with, and they literally walk through those 5 phases: the vision, the pictures on the page, right? The strategic plan, the colors and the types of pieces are ultimately there and listed on the side typically, or some scope of that. Third, financial acumen, they give the exact account. Fourth, team development, they tell you the age and stage and time necessary to get it done. And then fifth, project management, they literally have it mapped out piece by piece, step by step of what you need to do. And if you merely follow that, you're there. Now, look at the frustration of that first step. If I only tell you build me a car and here's a big box of Legos, you can go get whatever you want. A lot of people be frustrated, right? Because they can't get that project done. It's certainly not in a reasonable amount of time, and it may never get done. But look at the satisfaction when it's done well. That ultimately at the end, like literally my kids would always come, look what I built, Dad.
Yeah.
And they were super excited. That is a well-run project. And those are these steps they went through as an organization. They're super consistent with it. Every box is always the same. And then that is why their brand builds, because they follow those 5 steps every time without expectation or without missing a step. And that is ultimately how they build the entire project. Yet there's countless toy organizations that don't do that. And why is Lego a viable, successful, long-standing, consistent brand and the other toy companies are not? I believe because they adhere to those 5 capacities very well consistently, where every other toy company is really that project management. What toy should we develop? What do kids like today? What do they want to do today? And there's no methodology, no approach to it all. And that's ultimately why those toys are not as a brand being built like Lego compared to the other brands that fail, in that same endeavor.
Now, back to our leader who wants to grow specifically in project management, right? So
Yep.
Here they are. They want to grow in project management. They shouldn't feel like a lone ranger. Plenty of leaders have grown in this area. There are some tools or some resources available, right, that they can use.
Yep.
What are some of those tools and resources available for them to tap into?
And again, I'm going to refer to my first podcast in that regard because there's structural elements that would apply those projects. Because many people get trapped with a project, not their schedule, right? Because we can take on a project but not have the schedule to achieve it. We can take on a project and not follow the schedule to achieve it. So first, I look at my personal daily schedule, and since we're talking about toys a lot this particular podcast, one of the other exercises I use is a Jenga game. And on the Jenga, if we've all played Jenga, it's basically a stack of blocks. And then as you push them out, you alternate turns. And then ultimately, the first person to let it fall loses. And so on the Jenga, I have a schedule block, and each one accounts for an hour of time. And there's roughly 40 blocks that are there, I believe, somewhere in that vicinity. And then you take out those particular blocks, and it's 40 hours in a week, and you put them on the schedule. And then I color code the back of them, and I say, okay, this is vision. That's one category that's there. And there's only a small, maybe 1 or 2 hours a week that's there, maybe just 1 in this case. Then I have strategic planning. And so then from strategic planning, I have maybe 3 blocks there, 3 hours a week. And then you have your financial acumen, might be 5 blocks, whatever the case might be. But you work it all the way down, and the majority of it's project management. Essentially, about 60% of your week, 3 days, should be around project management, give or take. And the rest should be on either strategic planning, visioning, 1 block, strategic planning, maybe 2 blocks, financial acumen, maybe 3 blocks, and then team development is another 5 blocks, and then that covers 2 days. The other 3 days are working on project management. That's where then you're saying, okay, what vision should I be doing for a future project, right? Instead of just only working on project management that week, we don't get a consistent cadence, or conversely, only working on vision, right? So we need to have a balance of our weeks to work on a project. That is how you consistently make progress. So as a leader, allocate your time. Where is your time spent? If you're only spending your time on vision, you're never going to get any projects done. If you're only on projects, you're not going to set up the vision for the next one. So really look at your time well, and that's how you're going to get consistent project. What does that eliminate as a leader? The ebbs and flows of your organization, right? If you finish a big project, and let's use construction or something like that because it's pretty obvious. If you are only working on the actual project at hand and you're not building new clientele, you're not generating invoices, you're not paying your employees, when that project is done, you're going to feel a huge sense of accomplishment, but you'll be broke 2 weeks, 5 weeks, 10 weeks later because you did not build that pipeline. Organizations and projects work the same way. You need to work on a project with the majority of your time of that week, 60%, but always have the next ones you're setting up. It's balancing your time. And that is how, as a leader, we should develop our skills to say, am I working on my business or in my business? There is always going to be at a stage where you're working in your business. You can't avoid that because someone has to do the work. And if it's not you, then who? And you can't afford the people to do it on your behalf if you're not doing it. But if you're not working on your business, and then as the organization grows, the percentage of time, and I don't necessarily work on projects 60% of my week now, it's probably more like 10%, because the organization is large enough and we have people that are adept at that project. But I definitely need to have projects I take on and be able to manage at the same time. So that's really where you look at those two things and you say, okay, what projects warrant my time? And then ultimately, what percentage of my time are working on those projects?
So, horror story, middle of a project and something happens to the leader, right?
Yeah.
So you set it all up, but then the leader goes awry for some reason. Have you ever seen something like that? And what happens? Why does that happen?
Absolutely. And that is why team development's fourth, right? Because is this project the person or the organization? That's the first question.
If it's the person, then
that's your problem. You made that mistake, right? You hired a person and it wasn't an organizational project, right? So you really need to go back. If it goes awry because you don't have the right person or the person leaves or all the above, then it may not have been a project the organization would accomplish the vision. Because what I am doing is building an organization that will transcend me. And if it can transcend me, it can transcend anyone I hand that project off to. So I want a vision so clear that no matter who the leader is, the organization's vision is there, right? And there's countless organizations that have been around throughout duration of time, right? I mean, I talk about my faith often, and I look at Christianity. You know, Jesus is the beginning and the pinnacle of the Christianity, and he hasn't been on this earth for quite some time. And that project that was launching the church is still ongoing now with different leaders throughout the entirety of time, right? So that's a clear vision. The strategic plan was how the church was ultimately going to be launched initially. Financial acumen, they began to look at, in that case, tithes and offerings. The team was the people to lead it at the time, and the project was building that church, right? And so ultimately we see that recycled time and time and time and time again as an enduring way to do that. Whereas we see things that didn't finish that, right? So I'll give an example. One of the ones that I'm, revisiting myself is Mount Rushmore. You had a guy that had a particular project. He actually died and it was incomplete. If you go up there and look at Mount Rushmore, he wanted them all the way down to kind of their bust, the full bust. And really it's kind of the head and right here. And you go look at the clay model that he built, and it was already, the project never finished because it was really predicated on upon an individual and their unique talent and ability. It wasn't owned by the federal government to finish it. It wasn't owned by another group to go forward. That was merely a project of which we still enjoy, and it got 90% done, 80% done, whatever the percentage was, but it wasn't completed. And so that's an example of a project with a particular person that wasn't owned by an organization. What we want is an organization to own the project so that as the leader is no longer able to do that, it continues on. So if you have a project that's constantly getting stopped because the leader's stopping it, really look, is that an organizational project or an individual project?
Right. Very good. Very good. Well, we've come to the end of our time. Project management, integral part of leadership. Thank you very much, Reed, for sharing with us. Thank you, listeners, for joining us here on ReedFlections. Make sure to be here, episode 15 through 19. Where in the organizations can leaders grow? So we're talking about organizational structure, right? We're talking about the different levels of leadership from associate all the way up to the C-suite. It should be fascinating stuff. So I'm Art Calderon. Be purposeful.
If you are a leader and you get stressed around project management or any project that's assigned, this is 100% on not taking the other steps. If you see a new project being assigned to you and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can get it done. I don't have the money to do it. I don't have the right team. Start with vision. First and foremost, where does this project align with the vision I'm trying to achieve? Then, what strategic plan is in place to accomplish that vision? What financial acumen? How is it going to be worth it? That will be a motivator as you get to your project. Then, fourth, do I have the right team around me? Then, fifth is that project. You will find that if you are stressed around a project and you walk through those things, you will have a huge sense of relief and a much higher likelihood of completing that project, which will lead to progression towards your vision. So evaluate the project you're working on now and assess your stress associated with it, and then apply that to the previous 4 podcasts and this podcast. And as a result, you'll see that project come to fruition with less stress, and you'll be that much closer to accomplishing your vision. Go and make it happen.